Good morning. My name is Shalane Kurd. I'm a member of the Oak Ridge Unitarian Universalist Church Board, and we'd like to welcome you today to today's service. Whether you're here today for the first time or back for the first time in a long time, we hope your time with us will be rejuvenating and fulfilling. Before service starts, we have a couple of brief announcements. First, please consider joining the ORUUC Facebook group. It's a great place to meet people and the way we stay connected throughout the week. Second, after service, many of us go to other smaller groups for a second hour of worship. You're welcome to attend any group listed on the slide when the service ends, but we particularly invite you to stay right here in this Zoom room for a session we called Inquirers. Inquirers is a great place for people coming into the community to get to know one another and to learn more about the congregation and Unitarian Universalism. Finally, for almost 15 years, every week, our congregation sends half the offering out the door in support of a mission or ministry in our local area. For the month of November, the Split the Plate recipient is the Free Medical Clinic. Our first UU principle is the inherent worth and dignity of everyone. The Free Medical Clinic offers no-charge primary medical services to low-income and uninsured residents of Anderson, Roane, and Morgan counties. Because the clinic serves people who do not have health insurance or cannot afford to pay, their services can sometimes mean the difference between life and death. Since 2010, the Free Medical Clinic has provided over 40,000 patient visits. But because they are primarily a volunteer organization, they rely on donations from individuals, churches, groups, etc. When the offering comes around, we ask that you consider giving as generously as you're able. Once again, thanks for joining us today and welcome. We hope today is the start of something beautiful.
So the executive team has chosen Jinx Watson and Abby Moore as our volunteers of the month for their leadership with Stone Soup, Sanctuary, and numerous other initiatives throughout ORUUC. These ladies exemplify what it means to serve others. They worked alongside others to develop a plan to feed the community, which led to Stone Soup. This monthly community meal is different from any other. Attendees are served as guests and treated like family. Stone Soup just celebrated their 10th anniversary in September, which means they have served over 12,000 meals to those in need of nutrition or fellowship. They have also worked untold hours with the local sanctuary movement. This includes being a witness at the ICE office in Knoxville and providing snacks and drinks for those that had to stand in line for hours just to check in for part of their immigration process. These ladies have their hands in so many things that they can't possibly all be listed here, and we are so blessed to have them in our family here at ORUUC. Now let's worship together.
The gift of temptation allows us to examine what our best path is, as opposed to the easiest path. Temptation invites us to do what is comfortable and familiar. It beckons us to rely on old maps. They do not serve us in new territory. Our nation has been dangerously tested by the temptation of comfortable false narratives about the exceptionalism that denies our true past and obscures our present. This season of spiritual turbulence reflects the turmoil at all levels of society. Let us examine the path that helps us bring the best of our energy and joy to a weary world.
And when the sky is swept of walls, and keeps but gentle moon and stars, that peaceful sky, that harmless air, how sweet the darkness there.
When Adam and Eve surrendered to temptation and ate the forbidden fruit, it was the plot twist in a story about a perfect world. It was an unexpected gift to them of life in all its messiness and promise. As we light our chalice this morning, may the gift of temptation, like the forbidden fruit, lead us to follow a new path, to find a new voice, to glimpse a new light.
Good morning, everyone. Would you join me in singing our opening hymn? It's When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
Now's our opportunity in worship to bring our hearts into a bit more of a holy place by sharing a bit of light with one another, by sharing where our heart is in a more intentional and deep way. So this is our altar building. Part of our altar building is if you have a candle close by, you might light a candle and hold it up to the camera to share a bit of light with your fellow ORUUCians. And you might also share one word in the chat that represents a prayer, hope, concern. Share where your heart is today, where your spirit is this morning. And if there is a prayer request that you would like incorporated into the broader prayers of the community that we will have after the altar building, you can send that to the email listed, oruuc.community.prayers@gmail.com. Share some light.
I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out.
Will you join me for a moment of prayerful contemplation as we lift up the hearts and minds and souls of this community? There is one among us who lifts up prayers for a peaceful national transition of power. May love, health, and peace come to us all in this strange in-between time when our hearts want to sing and when there is so much crying left to be done. May we have that steady, stable ground. May not be here just yet, but may it be on the way. May our feet find some clear, easy place to start a new journey together. May we not forget these past 4 years have been, and may we not believe that it will be easy going forward. May we find some blessed rest now in preparation for the courageous and awesome work there is left to be done in the loving this world into greater wholeness and bending the arc of this country towards justice. The prayers of the people, may they be received. Amen.
Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out.
We come to the time in our service when each of you is invited to reach into your own sense of generosity, that you might add your gifts to the ongoing work of healing and hope so needed in our community. Our morning offering will now be gratefully received.
It seems so hard to breathe right now. It seems so hard to breathe right now. It seems so hard to breathe right now. Right now, it's so hard to breathe. The days unsmooth like ragged twine. I've lost the thread, what I had in mind. When will I shine? Seems so hard to breathe right now. It seems so hard to breathe right now. It seems so hard to breathe right now. Right now, it's so hard to breathe. It's closing in. It's shutting down. It's wearing thin, but a distant sound says I'm glory bound. Seems so hard to breathe right now. Seems so hard to breathe right now. Seems so hard to breathe right now. Right now, it's so hard to breathe. I feel you near. Your voice is kind. Your love is real. Your beauty shines. I surrender my fear. It's not so hard to breathe right now. Not quite so hard to breathe right now. It's not so hard to breathe right now. Right now, it's not so hard to breathe. Right now, it's not so hard to breathe.
May the gifts of the people so generously given go now out into this community and do the work of justice, the work of healing, the work of building community, connection, hope, and possibilities for a future beyond all our dreams. May generosity beget generosity. May it ripple outward. Thank you, each of you.
Rooted in love, we covenant together in peace, to face conflict with compassion, to see strength in diversity, to share laughter and tears, to honor the profound in each of us. With purpose and passion, we care for one another and grow together, rooted in love.
When Ganesha was a small child, he often amused himself by playing on the forested slopes of Mount Kailasa. Sometimes he would invent games, pretending to be a great king and leading imaginary warriors into battle. Once, having nothing to do, he said to his mother, Parvati,
I have nothing to do.
Parvati looked surprised. Nothing to do with the mountains for your playground? When my spirit is unsettled, or when my soul needs new vision, I sometimes go where the wild creatures go, to see the world through their eyes.
I'll go out now, but I will go hunting.
Ganesha looked around outside the hut. Brandishing his toy axe, he ran off, leaping down the mountain trails, shouting with glee.
I am the greatest warrior of the wild animals. Run for your lives.
Ganesha stopped and looked about him.
But what shall I hunt? I need an animal to hunt.
Suddenly, a cat darted from behind a rock and ran off down the trail.
Aha! I'm going to pretend you're a tiger and I'm going to hunt you.
And he raced on after the cat. The cat ran down the mountain, mewing with fright. But Ganesha was too caught up with his games to notice her fear. He convinced himself that she was a ferocious tiger, and he was determined to hunt her down. When he caught up with her, he grabbed her by the tail and pinned her to the ground, shouting,
Now I've got you, you evil tiger.
The poor cat was too afraid to do anything but lie very still. She could not even meow. She shivered and quaked, and all of a sudden Ganesha noticed that his fearsome prey appeared to have surrendered completely.
That wasn't at all,
muttered Ganesha as he picked himself up and went back home. When he got there, he was surprised to find that his mother, Parvati, was covered with scratches and bruises, as if rocks and boulders had cut her skin and thorns had pierced her cheeks.
Amma, what happened to you?
You did this to me, child. Don't you remember?
I did? No, I didn't. I would never hurt you like that.
Think back. Did you hurt a living creature only a little while ago? Ganesha was about to deny this terrible accusation completely, but then he remembered the cat. He looked at the ground in shame. He hung his head lower and lower until his big ears drooped down to his chest and his trunk slumped on the earth. I was that cat, said Parvati. Remember this for all your life. When you hurt any living creature, you hurt me. Ganesha hugged his mother sadly.
Forgive me, Mother. I did not mean to hurt you.
Ah, but did you mean to hurt the cat?
No. Yes. No, I didn't. It was only a game.
For you, perhaps. But as you can tell, it was no game for me. Take care in your play you do not injure others or cause them grief and fear.
Yes, Amma.
After that, he took special care to be gentle to the wild creatures of the forest and streams, as you must too, for any one of them could be Parvati in disguise.
Okay, I am Christine Rader, for those of you that don't know me, Director of Faith Formation, and thankfully looking a little less worse for the wear than there. It is a very special tradition in our church that following the story, as the children would walk out of the sanctuary and into their children's time, that people in the center aisle would stand up, raise their arms, and form an arch so that the children could walk underneath and receive a blessing. And here in the virtual setting, we ask you to go ahead and form that arch. You can raise your arms up high, or you can make an arch like this to welcome the children into your hearts.
Beneath our arms we shelter you. You warm our hearts as you pass through. May God guide you as you go, to help you learn and help you grow.
The Bible records 3 times when Jesus was tempted by Satan. He was tempted first with hedonism, then egoism, and finally with materialism. It's not difficult to telescope those temptations into this moment. How have we fared? Has our nation been tempted with the promise of the pleasure of good times ahead? Have we strutted the world stage as exceptional above other nations? Have we allowed the rich to prosper at the expense of the disadvantaged, homeless, and sick? The gift of temptation invites us, both as individuals and as a nation, to practice humility. It is from humility that we find a compassionate connection to our world.
This was a very difficult sermon to write when I started it 3 weeks ago, because I had to account for 5 cases that could have possibly happened by this morning. Biden's victory is uncontested. Trump's re-election is uncontested. The election results are still unknown. The election results are contested. And Trump is trashing the government on his way out. Of course, there are some standard ministerial things I can say at a moment like this. A good minister would remind everyone that feelings can be hurt when you gloat. There are always 2 sides to any story. Compromise means no one is too badly damaged because everyone loses a little bit for the common good. Another thing I might say is this is a time for healing wounds of divisiveness and rancor, and to come together as an American family. Consider that I have just done the good ministerial thing. Now that's over, let's get to some hard truths. I will first talk about issues that need to be discussed, no matter what our political landscape looks like at the moment. And then I will discuss the spiritual aspects of the circumstances we find ourselves in. And last, I will talk about how we can go forward as people of faith in a world that has been upended. James Burke wrote a book in 1985 called The Day the Universe Changed. And in that book, Burke describes how seemingly small random events or isolated moments can radically change our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. In the introduction, Burke wrote, "We are what we know, and when the body of knowledge changes, so do we." I believe that such a moment occurred on July 27th, 2016. That moment happened just after the Republican National Convention that concluded, and Trump had been nominated as president. My wife and I watched an interview with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, and CNN's Allison Camerata, and we were horrified to hear Gingrich explain what we now all understand as alternative truth. And when confronted with the facts, crime in the United States had actually decreased, he insisted that facts don't matter as much as feelings about crime. He said, "The current view is that liberals have a whole set of statistics, which theoretically may be right, but it's not where human beings are. People are frightened. As a political candidate, I'd go with how people feel, and I'll let you go with the theoreticians." I believe that was the moment, the warning shot, that very few of us heard about the death of truth and the political weaponization of fear. This was the moment when temptation overtook our nation and we succumbed to fear. We ran willingly into the dark woods. Our nation has been fatally tested in the past 4 years by the temptation of comfortable false narratives about the exceptionalism that denies our true past and obscures our present. We accepted a president who operates from his basest instincts and feelings. The once grand old party actually became, for the first time in our existence, a party that embodied the ego of one man and reflected that fact in their national platform. It was a platform that violated human rights. It celebrated white supremacy. And it showed disregard for the health and well-being of the planet and all the creatures on it. Democracies are run on fact, science, objectivity, along with rules and laws. When there's no basis for action, say feelings, then there's no democracy. We knew that, but we abandoned our best path because a messy democracy is too complicated to bear. So Newt Gingrich, his ilk, smashed our Achilles heel, and they herded us into temptation and ushered in an era of darkness. Now I'm going to cut to the chase, and I'm not going to mince words with this congregation. I will tell you why I think we found ourselves in these dark woods. It is because people of color are locked into a death spiral with white America, because let's be honest. White America is afraid of losing its identity and its historical privilege. There's solid research to suggest that this fear runs extremely deep, and that it runs deep enough to tear our nation apart. The research shows that much of the extreme hardening of political ideology on the right is a function of racism. For example, political scientists Stephen Miller and Nicholas Davis of Texas A&M released a study in 2016 titled "White Outgroup Intolerance and Declining Support for American Democracy." Their study found a correlation between white America's intolerance and support for authoritarian rule. In other words, when intolerant white people fear democracy may benefit marginalized people, they abandon their commitment to democracy. And study after study confirms this in what social scientists now call the Trump effect of rising authoritarianism. We drank the Kool-Aid, and now we're suffering from the sugar high. Our myth of American exceptionalism made us believe that the history of the United States is inherently different from that of other nations. We believe in a unique nation, in a unique mission to transform the world, and that this mission gives us a superiority over other nations. So we abandoned commitments to lessen the effects of climate disruption with other countries. We shredded human rights guarantees for refugees and immigrants. And we sided with murderous dictators for the sake of expediency. The earlier roots of this kind of thinking brought us to the doctrine of manifest destiny that allowed us to commit genocide and embrace slavery. But unlike the South Africans who faced their past with truth and reconciliation commissions, we've gone blithely along without cleansing ourselves. Now, with this level of racism so woven into our national DNA, we've been blinded to the moral forest for the trees. The myth of American exceptionalism was the siren song of Trump. Its melody was hatred, and its lyrics were lies. Our seduction to this temptation took us on a spiraling circle to the basement of our weakened and now crumbling democracy. It was flown on the wings of greed, xenophobia, racial and ethnic animus, homophobia, sexism, intolerance, religious cowardice, and hatred of the other. We feasted on lies, cruelty, indifference, and supremacy. We were lost. We are lost. This was the moment when writing this sermon that I felt I had to determine which way to go. Are we still lost today? Is Trump still our president? Did Biden win a landslide that overwhelmed any attempt at cheating? Are we still protesting racial brutality of police in the streets? Have our tears of anger and grief turned into tears of joy? No matter who was elected, we still need to live in a country with millions of people who are angry and upset. Some take the results of this election as a call to arms, both figuratively and literally. Many millions are angry the election was rigged, and they fear for the end of their world. From a spiritual perspective, the answers to these questions of what happened are not as important as what caused those questions to be raised. Now, my point is that it's not a crisis of merely political or economic or medical or legal proportions. This is a spiritual crisis of worldwide proportions. In this world of binary choices, we get lost. What is absent from this forest we're in is grace, forbearance, patience, kindness, compassion, and love. And those are the lights at the periphery of our view that cannot be focused on at this moment. We've lost our way, and we feel alone and in our isolation. We don't know what to do. We ran into the dark forest because we were afraid. And we're here in this forest because we have forgotten that we are not alone. We have succumbed to those feelings of isolation and fear for the past 4 years. Now, the danger is to ignore further temptation. Forget judicial literalism, differences between capitalism and socialism, deficit spending, globalism, military spending, economic disparities, the trade deficit, homelessness, the pandemic, and a host of other problems. I believe the greatest challenge we have is to bring social justice into the center of our national ethos. And that is the place from which all the other issues we face can be best addressed. So here's the hit playlist of social justice. The 9 most pressing challenges that encompass the rest: racial injustice, voting rights, climate justice, healthcare, the refugee crisis, the income gap, gun violence, and hunger and food insecurity. And you notice that none of those things were positively addressed by the previous Trump administration. This playlist used to be called things like forming a more perfect union or for the greater good. And these were covered under the modern concepts of social contracts, which we all understand intuitively as the basis for our civilization. So the idea that we cannot lift our heads up towards a brighter purpose is just another one of the great lies of trickle-down capitalist hegemony. We actually have the ability to form a more perfect union and address all of the social justice issues. So here's some facts. I know Newt Gingrich might have a problem with these pesky little things, but here they are, nonetheless. About $175 billion is what it would take to bring every person in the United States up to the poverty line. And that number is just 1.08% of the nation's gross domestic product. That number is just 1/5 of the $671 billion the federal government will spend on the military. Here's another fun fact. The $200 billion to pay for the initial batch of F-35 fighter jets, which are chronically plagued with misfortunes and incompetence, and which is just one weapon system program in the United States defense budget, that could have housed every one of the 554,000 homeless people in the United States in a $300,000 house last year. So don't believe that we do not have the wherewithal to do everything necessary to directly improve the quality of life for every American. Justice or of all our legal, economic, and policy imperatives. These last 4 years have revealed the terrible reality that our country is fractured along many lines, and that our cherished values were never intended for all to enjoy. The last 4 years have revealed that we may not have the moral and political will to pay more than lip service to social justice. But all that said, there is something to the notion of the spiritual will of a people. We saw it in our nation during the Civil War. We also saw it during World Wars I and II and during the 9/11 crisis. So we know the United States is capable of lifting its head to the sky. We are capable of escaping the dark woods. And no, the way out is not always straight or even noble. We interred Japanese Americans during World War II. We've suppressed voting rights for decades, and we're still at it. We've segregated our fellow citizens, and we're still discriminating against people because of their race, ethnicities, or gender identities. We have done terrible things during our time in the woods. And even now, on our slow way out, we're still being tempted. The Japanese art of Kitsugi is based on the concept that by embracing flaws and imperfections, you can create an even stronger, more beautiful piece of art. Broken pottery is mended in the areas of breakage with lacquer mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. And the binding becomes part of the aesthetic beauty and the quality of the pottery. The binding makes the entire structure stronger. I believe our country can become stronger and more beautiful by the intentional examination of our flawed past and how that past has influenced the present. The ideals most of us share, but have somehow forgotten how to communicate with each other, can be the precious metals that bind all the fractured parts of our nation. So I have a suggestion. Let's just start by just telling the truth again. And then we mix in caring for health and well-being of others, and then we stir in some respect for the opinions and feelings of our neighbors, and then we add a generous dash of love for our planet and each other. That's what we should glue all the broken parts of our country with. We are a rich and vibrant nation because at our core, we embody beautiful concepts. Our ideals have inspired the world because of their spiritual and moral brilliance. And we've proven that we can endure the despots, the racist administrations, and government by insults because we are a good and decent people. And we've earned a reprieve by electing Biden and Harris, thank God. But we still have a long way to go. We can't sit still. But through all this, we've learned we are stronger than the temptations that seek to define us. We need to get out of the woods. We need to get out of these dark woods. But we are Americans. So borrowing words from some pretty awesome people on an airplane, let's roll. Namaste.
You have a place in this world, a place where everything comes together in your body and you disappear into a seamless whole. Get over whatever shortcomings afflict you and inhabit this world with your fullest self. Please speak the words that are underlined when we get to them. May the Spirit of the living God, made known to us most fully within life's dark wood, go before you to show you the way. Go above you to watch over you. Go behind you to push you into places you may not necessarily go yourself. Go beneath you to uphold and uplift you. Go beside you to be your strong and constant companion. And dwell within you to remind you that you are surely not alone, and that you are loved, loved beyond your wildest imagination. And may the fire of God's blessing burn brightly upon you and within you, now and always. Amen.
Our closing hymn this morning is We'll Build a Land. Please join me in singing.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come, build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand her people. Oh, come, build a land, my people we seek. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
In the forest, we sometimes cannot find our way. We're tempted to look only at the ground and not ahead or above. Outside the darkness, beyond the places where we dare not look, is where stars always dwell. For people tempted and lost, the lights of grace, forbearance, patience, kindness, compassion, and love can be hard to see. When tempted and alone, remember to look up and see the ever-dancing circles of stars in the night. Go now in peace. Go now in grace, forbearance, patience, kindness, compassion, and love, until we meet again.
May your life be
be as a song, resounding with the dawn, to sing like the light, and softly serenade the stars, ever dancing circles in the night.